Hello, good day po to everyone. So welcome again to our a second topic in our Project Tao last sessions. So for this day. So again, welcome to our Project Tao Diba, our provision of technical assistance on digital blooms assessment. So before I start po, so let me greet our AMCEL proponents, the proponents of this Project Tao Diba, starting with Sir Arnold M. Galvez, the PSDS of Peñaranda, Ma'am Marisa G. Gamboa, the PSDS of San Leonardo, Dr. Cesar C. Lopez, the PSDS of Saragossa, and of course we have Ma'am Esther B. Ramos, our PSDS in San Antonio District. We have also Ma'am Lulu B. Diamante, the PSDS of Laur. Yours truly, Mr. Laverne A. Nadignon Jr., EPS in ICT and ADM. And of course, our PSDS of Rizal District, we have Ma'am Elizabeth P. Sibayan. So this time po, we will proceed to our next topic po. And the topic assigned to me is the Bloom's Taxonomy and the SAMR model of ICT integration. Okay, so this will focus still about our formative assessment. So this is Mr. Laverne A. Nadignon Jr., your Education Program Supervisor in charge of ICT ADM at SDO Nueva Ecija. So our objectives po for this session is to discuss the Bloom's taxonomy in designing assessment. The second one is to describe and define the SAMR model of ICT integration. The third one is to define and describe the digital Bloom's taxonomy in assessment, or what we call the DIBA tools. And number four is to identify appropriate DIBA tools in assessment. So to start with our discussion, so let's define what is Bloom's taxonomy. So actually, our dear participants, Bloom's taxonomy was originally proposed by Benjamin Bloom and his colleagues in 1956. So this taxonomy was later revised in 1990s by a group of cognitive psychologists, including David R. Cratwell, who worked with the Bloom. So this is the reason why we have the term revised Bloom's taxonomy. So this Bloom's taxonomy, it is a well-known and widely used framework in education that aims to categorize and organize educational objectives and learning outcomes. So remember, this Bloom's taxonomy provides a structured approach in designing curriculum or designing our lesson, also in developing our assessments, and also it will also serve as guide in our instructional strategies on how we can deliver our instruction. So the taxonomy is hierarchical, meaning it is arranged in a systematic order from lower order thinking skills, starting from the bottom, to higher order thinking skills. Will end at the upper part of this order. Then the levels of the taxonomy represent different levels of cognitive. Take note of this. The word cognitive and depth of understanding that learners can achieve. So I think most of us are aware of the use of Bloom's taxonomy, and we have also aware that this is very useful, especially as we design our summative assessment. So we are all familiar with this Bloom's taxonomy. So remember that there are versions of this Bloom's taxonomy. So in this next slide, this slide shows the old version of our Bloom's taxonomy and the revised version of the Bloom's taxonomy. So on the left side of the slide, we can have the old version, wherein the old version has the following cognitive levels. Starting from the bottom, that is the lower level thinking skills, the knowledge, followed by comprehension, then application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So maybe some of us are aware of these old versions, no? Because we use these old versions during our college days or when we were in high school or when we were in elementary maybe. Okay, so this time, let's identify the cognitive levels under the revised version of this Bloom's taxonomy. So we have here the bottom part or the lowest part of this Bloom's taxonomy on the revised version is remembering. So instead of knowledge, it is now called remembering. So after that is understanding. So the old version is comprehension. Then after understanding is applying. The old version is application. Then analyzing, the old version is analysis. Then evaluating, the old version of it is synthesis, and creating from evaluation. So although they are still the same, but since it is now have the revised version, so we will focus on the revised version. So my dear participants, our master teachers, I know that you are also familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy as we use it in assessment. Now, based from our depth and order number 8, Series 2015, it is the policy guidelines on classroom assessment for K-12 basic education. Now, this slide will show us on how we can describe each cognitive process dimensions from the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So this is based from depth and order number 8, series 2015. So let's take it one by one. So remember, ano po? So we have 6 cognitive levels. So let's describe each of them. So the first one is remembering. So in remembering, actually, in terms of assessment, we can help our learners to recall. And the learner can recall information and retrieve relevant knowledge from long-term memory. So the words that are usually used in this remembering part of our Bloom's taxonomy are to identify, to retrieve, to help them recognize, to duplicate, to list, memorize, and repeat or reproduce. So these are the words that we are using as we design our assessment. So the next part or the next level of cognitive it is the understanding. So in under the understanding, the learner can construct meaning from oral, written, and graphic messages. Okay, so what are those examples of descriptors, no, in terms of understanding? So we can use the interpret, we can use exemplify, classify, or summarize, or infer, or maybe compare, explain, or paraphrase, or simple the word discuss. So these are the words that we can use for us to help our learners to understand the concept or a particular topic in our lesson. Okay, so let's now proceed to the third level of cognitive, which is the applying, wherein our learner can use information to undertake a procedure in a familiar situations or in a way. So the words that can be used in this applying level of cognitive is we have the execute, they will implement, demonstrate, dramatize, interpret, solve, use, illustrate, convert, or discover. So I think you are now having idea on how we can use these words for us to design our assessment. Then the fourth level under the under the revised Bloom's taxonomy is analyzing. Where in this level, our learners can distinguish between parts and determine how they relate to one another and to the overall structure and purpose. So for example, they can differentiate, we can ask them to distinguish, we can also ask them to compare or to contrast or to organize, to outline, attribute, or deconstruct. Okay, so if you are using these words, if you are giving instructions and the words that you are going to use are these, maybe you are helping our learners to analyze. Okay, you helping them to analyze the things that you want them to analyze based from the topic that you have given to them. Okay. Next is evaluating. So under this level, evaluating, the learner can make judgment and justify decisions. So what are the examples on how we can help our learners to evaluate their judgment and for their justification of their decisions, like coordinate, measure, detect, defend, judge, argue, or kaya debate, critic, appraise, or simply the word evaluate. So if these are your instructions, maybe you are preparing them to evaluate, no? And make them decisions. Okay? And the highest level of cognitive is the creating, wherein our learner can put elements together to form a functional whole, create a new product or point of view. So these are the words that we can use to help them to create or to create something from their output. So they can generate, they can hypothesize, they can make plan, they can design, help them to develop, to produce, to construct, to formulate, assemble, design, and device. Okay, so our dear master teachers, I think you are now familiar with this revised Bloom's taxonomy, and you are now aware that these are some of the things that we can consider as we develop our assessment, particularly in developing our formative assessment tools. Okay, so actually, if we know about the Bloom's taxonomy, and we all know that this is hierarchical, meaning we can give instructions for a particular situation or for a particular skills that we want our learners to achieve. So meaning we cannot achieve the highest level or the highest level of thinking of our learners if we will not start from the lower level of thinking of our learners. So meaning in our designing of our lessons or even in our designing in assessment, so we have to consider all of these levels for our learners, okay, for us to be guided on designing our formative assessment. So this time we will now be introducing the SAMRA model of ICT integration. So the SAMRA stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Okay, so actually this is developed by Dr. Ruben Puendatura. So how can we use the SAMRA principles of ICT integration? So before I continue, let me remind that as we design our formative assessment, although we are also referring to the level of cognitives of our learners using the Bloom's taxonomy, and the challenge is how we can use ICT tools for us to also to align the use of ICT in terms of designing our formative assessment. And this is the principle of the ICT integration, and we can infuse it later. No, I will discuss on how we can infuse the SAMRA ICT integration and the Bloom's taxonomy. So for this presentation, so this SAMRA integration or model of ICT integration is designed to help our teachers infuse or to use technology into teaching and learning. So the goal of this ICT integration, the principle of ICT integration is to utilize on how we can use appropriate ICT tools in terms of applying our skills on developing formative assessment aligned with our Bloom's taxonomy. So for the purpose of presentation, so we will be comparing ICT integration with a cup of coffee. So maybe you are wondering why a cup of coffee. Now, so let's start with letter S. In SAMRA, no, letter S. S stands for substitution. So it says here, it is substituted the cup of coffee at home for a cup of coffee. Sorry. it is substituted the cup of coffee at home for a cup of coffee in a Starbucks. Kasi it is shown in our picture that we have a Starbucks coffee, no? So I'm not promoting Starbucks coffee here. Ayan. So this is only an example. So let's compare the two cups of coffee. The first one is made of porcelain and the other one is made of styrofoam, for example. So in ICT integration, maybe some of us are, maybe we are using technology just for substitution. So let us relate it in a cup of coffee. Now in this cup of coffee made of porcelain, on the left side, when we are using the porcelain cup of coffee or porcelain made cup of this coffee, this is a traditional way on using ICT, for example. And now the styrofoam is your technology here. Now, if you are going to compare the cup of coffee into ICT integration, so meaning that whenever we use something, for example, if you are using application that will only act as a substitution for your material, so meaning the level of ICT integration for that particular activity is only substitution. There's nothing, there's no changes after you use that technology. So for example, in this illustration, your coffee is in the cup of porcelain is the same as the coffee inside your styrofoam. So meaning if you are going to drink the coffee in the cup of in the porcelain made cup, and if you will drink the coffee inside the styrofoam, so it's still the same taste of that coffee. So meaning nothing changes. So this is the same with the ICT. So for example, if you will use Manila paper and your goal is to let them realize the pictures, they will just recognize the letters using slide presentation. So the object in your the object written in the Manila paper is the same with the picture posted in a slide presentation. So that is how we can use this substitution level of ICT integration. Actually, substitution is the lowest level of ICT integration. So anything that you use technology just to substitute instead of using the traditional material. So meaning you are just substituting your material into a digital or into an ICT based material. Okay, so this is how the substitution works. Now, next is letter A, augmentation. So going back to the original coffee in the porcelain made cup. Okay. Now, in augmentation, so when may augmentation, you add something from the original material. So this augmentation augmented, for example, in this illustration, augmented by adding cream, sugar, and some ice to the coffee and straw, a basic cup of coffee with added something. Now, so you will notice na still the coffee is there, but since you added cream, sugar, and ice to the cup made of plastic, for example, so your technology here is the cup made of plastic plus the cream, the sugar, and some ice. So it has it is something new, na? Because you have something added flavor to your coffee. Now in ICT integration, meaning if you are using application, if you are using ICT tools in your assessment, meaning it is not just a tool, but you can also add something creative or interactive for you to help our learners to be more motivated on understanding their ideas, or you can help them to generalize the concept of your topic by using other other features of the platforms aside from the usual features of your ICT tool. So meaning you can add aside from the usual pictures or text, but you can also add some sort of music maybe animation, or maybe videos. Okay, so it is parang you can add more something, more flavors to your presentation or to your assessment tools. Okay, so this is how we can describe um, your ICT integration using a cup of coffee. Okay, so once you added something that is with flavor, so you are trying to augment your material or your assessment tool. Okay, so I think you are with us so far. So let's now proceed to the next level, is letter M, the modification level. So in this illustration, modify the original copy with other flavors, syrups, and whipped cream, truly a modified copy. So if you are going to relate it in our ICT integration, so meaning you are trying to use application or ICT tools not just to substitute or to augment, but you want to modify the task that you are giving to your learners. So meaning it is not just the exact competencies that you want them to demonstrate, but you are modifying. So when we say modifying, you are trying to be creative on how our learners demonstrate the task or demonstrate the competencies that they are there, that they are trying to improve to their skills. Okay, so you are modifying. So actually, in modifying, maybe the original task you cannot easily grasp the original task or the original competencies because of the modification. So using a cup of coffee, the original copy, and the modified cup of coffee wherein you added syrup, cream, and others so that you can have more complicated, maybe complicated task for your particular activities for your learners. Okay, so that is modification. So later we will give you a visual presentation on how we can adapt or how we can apply it as we design our formative assessment. And then the fourth one, the last level of ICT integration is letter R, the redefinition. So totally redefine the coffee into pumpkin spice latte. Okay. So it also shows that when we are giving our learners the competencies that they will that they will perform, meaning in this level of ICT integration, we are giving them different tools that they can be more creative on developing their skills for them to achieve the goals of learning the concepts or learning the topics that you are giving them. So meaning we will not just focus on the basic, we will not just focus on the use of simple applications, but also you are trying to give them opportunity to explore different ICT tools available to them. Okay. Now to sum it up, so this is how we can describe the SAMRA level of IT integration using the Starbucks analogy. No? So letter S, technology acts as a direct tool, substitute with no functional change. Remember that when you are using a tool that just to substitute and there will be no functional change, you are in the substitution level of ICT integration. So that is just simple coffee. Okay. Now in letter A, the SAMRA, technology acts as a direct tool, substitute with functional improvement. So you are making some improvement out of your original tool. And then for the letter M, technology allows for significant task redesign. So meaning you are making some modification for you uh, to have a redesigned competencies or redesigned activities. And for the letter R, the technology allows for the creation of the new task. So you are giving our learners to be creative in developing and in producing new output based from the tools that you are that they are applying. Okay, so this time let us apply our knowledge about SAMRA. So imagine that we have a competency. So for example, I will give you a sample learning competencies in grade 8 and grade 8. I think this is in values, no? Ayan. I forgot to include here in my presentation anong subject. So I think it is in Filipino or values. Okay, sige. So in learning competencies, for example, so this is our sample SAMRA-based formative assessment. So in our learning competencies, for example, in grade 8, so sabi dito na isasagawa ang mga angkop na kilos tungo sa pagkakaroon ng pagpapaunlad ng komunikasyon sa pamilya. So yan yung learning competencies natin or yan yung topic natin. Now, so let us apply our knowledge about substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Okay? Redefinition yan. Okay. Now, sa substitution, tingnan natin. So, since sabi natin substitution, so tingnan natin, paano ba natin may apply itong learning competencies na to na isasagawa ang mga angkop na kilos. Ayan. So, sabi sa substitution, gamit ang Padlet application, ang mga mag-aaral ay magbabahagi sa pamamagitan ng pagsulat ng kanilang pangunawa kung paano sinasagawa ang maunlad na komunikasyon sa pamilya. So, Padlet application. So, kung familiar kayo sa Padlet, ito yung parang nagpo-post lang yung bata ng kanilang gustong i-share sa application. Okay? So, sa Padlet, ibig sabihin, instead na gumamit sila ng papel or instead of using Manila paper, they will use their Padlet for them to post their ideas, for them to share. Ito, para maibahagi nila ang kanilang naisin sa kanilang pangunawa kung paano sinasagawa ang maunlad na komunikasyon. So, substitution lang yung Padlet kasi actually pwede naman nilang gamitin ang papel. Di ba? So, pero since ICT-based tayo, so gagamit sila ng papel. So, ibig sabihin, kapag gagawa tayo ng formative assessment, kumbaga i-rate natin paano ba nila naiintindihan yung lesson, so we will just use this application. So, at least makikita natin, ay, ang bata pala, ganito pala yung kanyang pagkakaintindi. So, formative tayo, nasa formative tayo. Anong activities natin sa formative ang pwede natin maibigay gamit ang mga ICT tools? So, gamit ang Padlet. Next, augmentation. Yan natin kung paano papasok ang ICT dito. Sa paggamit ng ClassPoint, ang mga mag-aaral ay bibigyan ng mga animated video clips upang masuri ang kanilang pangunawa kung paano sinasagawa ang maunlad na komunikasyon. Bakit ClassPoint? Ang ClassPoint kasi, di ba, ang ClassPoint pwede tayo mag-post ng mga pictures, we can post mga videos, ayan. And then, we are helping our learners to identify or to assess kung ano yung kanilang pangunawa sa kanilang kung paano ba sinasagawa ang maunlad na komunikasyon. Okay? So, yun. So, gagamit tayo ng interactive na application. So, that is a ClassPoint. Pwede tayong gumamit. Kasi sa ClassPoint, di ba, sabi natin, pag augmentation, we added something. So, pwede tayong maglagay ng music, o kaya ng animations, or kaya ng videos. So, pwede natin pasukan ang ClassPoint. So, hindi siya substitution kasi may mga music na dito, we have the animation na. Okay? Next, sa modification. Tingnan natin bakit naging modified na. Ang original natin ay naisasagawa lang, naisasagawa. Yun ang original task natin. So, sa modification, ang mga mag-aaral ay gagawa ng video clip presentation na may angkop na musika at magsasadula ng kanilang pagkaunawa gamit ang kanilang mobile phone na nagpapakita ng tamang pagsasagawa ng maunlad ng komunikasyon at ipabahagi sa Google Classroom upang mabigyan ng mungkahi at pagsusuri. O, di ba nakita natin dito na ang bata ay gagamit ng mobile phone. So, hindi sa substitution kasi may mobile phone na kasi gagawa sila ng movie or ng video clips na idadramatize nila. Parang ganun yung idea dito, di ba? Yun ang daman dito. So, dadramatize sila and then they will record it later siguro and then they will post it in their Google Classroom for assessment na. Okay? And then, sa redefinition, malilay spelling na redefinition, ang mga mag-aaral ay maglulunsad ng isang debate batay sa kanilang pangunawa sa pagsasagawa ng maunlad na komunikasyon sa pamilya gamit ang Google Meet at Mentimeter sa pagkalap ng impormasyon. So, gagamit pala sila ng Google Meet this time. So, marami na. May Mentimeter, may Google Meet pa. So, ibig sabihin, di ba ang ating challenge lang dito ay may isagawa lang yung angkop na kilos. Pero, ang dami na pinagdaanan. So, ibig sabihin, gagawa sila ng debate or parang magkikita sila ng debate. So kasi ang goal lang ng ating ang learning competencies lang natin ay maisagawa lang yung angkop na kilos. Pero dito, at least mapapakita nila kung paano ba talaga yung tamang pagkilos, di ba? Gamit ang Google Meet at Mentimeter. Okay? Now, so dito makita natin na marami pala tayong pwedeng gawin. So depende lang kung how we can apply it in our lessons. Actually, pwede naman kayo mamili lang dito ng isa. Halimbawa, yung lesson plan nyo ay pwedeng pang substitution lang. So hanggang doon lang siguro. Or maybe, if you can tackle all of them, all of these levels, so pwede rin naman. Pero make sure na you can do it in 1 hour. Usually, yung mga isang oras lang yung ating lesson. Okay? Now, so I have done with the SAMRA principles in ICT integration. So this time, let's go back to our project Tao Diba. No? So this is what we are implementing right now, our Tao Diba, meaning we are giving you this technical assistance on developing digital or ICT-based ICT tools or ICT-based assessment tools. So yun ang tawag natin ay DIBA tools. So ulitin ko lang po that this is our framework now. This is our framework on how we can give you technical assistance. Now, focusing on the implementation proper, and we are now dealing with the implementation proper. So this is how we can give you or how we can assist you on helping you to design your digital formative assessment tool. So we call it DIBA tools kasi it is based on the Bloom's assessment or the Bloom's taxonomy and the ICT. So we combine them. The ICT, we refer to the SAMRA, and the Bloom's taxonomy, that is our, this is how we can develop our formative. So joining them together, then we can arrive with this DIBA assessment tool. So following the ADI way on how we can finalize our ADI, we will analyze. So actually, we ask you to identify the learning competencies. Then right after that, we will design your lesson. We will develop your assessment tool. Then we will implement it into your classroom. And also, we will evaluate if we have an effective plan and assessment tools for our learners. Okay. Now, so this time, we will develop our digital Bloom's assessment tools. We will infuse the Bloom's taxonomy and the SAMRA model of ICT integration in assessment. So remember po how we are referring to assessment, but in this formative assessment po, so we will try to infuse the SAMRA and the Bloom's taxonomy. Wherein this is how we can make our we will make our tools for our presentation, or for our lesson planning. Okay. Now, so going back to this, so this is actually the highlight of our activity for this day, how we can infuse the digital tools and the Bloom's taxonomy, aligning with the digital with the SAMRA principle and the Bloom's taxonomy. So, for example, our topic in math, for example, this is in mathematics. So, our topic is addition of fractions. So, in addition of fraction, so in this addition of fractions, so let's identify the different SAMRA level, the substitution, the augmentation, the modification, and redefinition. So we will try to use technology here now in the digital tools, the SAMRA. Then let us now infuse it with the Bloom's taxonomy. So remember, in the level of thinking, so always remember that if we are helping our learners to remember something, so that is our lowest level of cognitive. So that is remembering. Okay. So in the application of digital tools, we are also applying the principle of ICT for us to help our learners to remember the concepts of our topic. So the challenge here is how we can how we can perform the task in the Bloom's taxonomy using appropriate ICT tools. Okay. Now in substitution, I mean the things or the ICT tools that we can use for the substitution is we are targeting the remembering level of cognitive or the cognitive level. Okay. Now in augmentation, we can use augmentation in understanding and in applying. Modification, we can apply modification or we can use tools in modification under applying, analyzing, evaluating. Okay? And in redefinition, we can also use it in evaluating and creating. So these are the examples of activities or assessment activities for our learners. So for example, in substitution and the remembering. So use Kahoot to assess students' recall of addition rules for fraction by asking multiple choice questions. Di ba? Our goal is to let them recall of the addition rules. So using Kahoot. So that is the SAMR. Kasi we are just substituting instead of using Manila paper or just flashcards, so we will use Kahoot. Diba? Next, augmentation. In understanding naman. In understanding, use Padlet or Flipgrid where students share their understanding of the concept and respond to peer explanation. Green pa. Ayan. Okay, going back to this. So use Padlet or Flipgrid where students share their understanding of the concept and respond to peer explanation of adding fractions. So that is under understanding. So we can use Padlet as way on how we can augment now, aside from the usual tools that we can use for the student to share their understanding. Then under applying, they can utilize offline or the teacher can utilize offline-based GeoGebra. If you are my teacher, you know about this. GeoGebra for students to solve their own addition problems with fractions, incorporating various levels of complexity. Okay. Then for analyzing, we can assign our students the task of using Microsoft Excel to organize and analyze data related to the addition of fractions. Okay, so i-analyze using Excel. Okay, so they try to use it. So we are under modifications. Okay, kasi we modified the activity. Next, evaluating. Under pa rin siya na modification or maybe the redefinition in evaluating, ask students to use Mentimeter in evaluating and comparing different strategies for adding fractions. Okay. So the use of Mentimeter in evaluating, comparing different strategies for adding fractions. So it is clear that we can use Mentimeter also as a tool to help our learners to evaluate and to compare different strategies in adding fractions. And of course, creating under the last level or the highest level of cognitive is the cognitive process dimension is the creating. Assign students the creation of video tutorials using mobile-based video editing tools. So whatever they have, what is available in their mobile phones on how they can edit videos to demonstrate and explain their own unique strategies for adding fractions. So highlighting the advantages and limitation of each approach. So this time is we are helping them to create on their own. We are helping them to create new tasks. Okay, so my dear participants, I think you are now ready, to conceptualize on how you can design on your lesson plan and also in your formative assessment. So these are only some of our examples. So I will give some examples here. So in this infusion of the Bloom's taxonomy and the SAMR, so for example, using ng Quizlet, the Google form in augmentation, modifications, Edpuzzle, and sa redefinition yung, what is this? Okay, so hindi ko siya makita, no? So these are actually the assessment tools that we can use as we apply it in our infusion of the blooms and the SAMRA. And another slides po. So this is sample digital blooms assessment or the DIBA tools wherein you can use different activities, no? For example, in remembering, you can have bookmarking, copying, highlighting, searching, journaling. Sa understanding naman, journaling, tweeting, tagging, and subscribing. Ayan. So these are actually the tools that we can use for those particular levels, the cognitive levels. Then applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And another last example, ito yung mga samples natin under the Bloom's assessment, ano? Yung remembering, yung R, U is understanding, applying is up, analyzing is an, evaluating is E and C. So these are some of the ICT tools that we can use in our as we design our formative assessment. So for the next presentation, actually, will be actually we are done with the different tools, no? So I just presented you the different tools, and on the next presentation will be the presentation of the ICT tools. It will be discussed to us by Sir Alan Custudio, and after that is the designing of our lesson plan. So my challenge is to apply our knowledge in the Bloom's taxonomy and the SAMRA on designing your lesson plan and also in your assessment tools. And that will be our next presentation for our last session. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you for listening and for your cooperation for this day. Thank you, and God bless.